Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Lynham, and I'm from Trinity College, Dublin. I'm just going to give it maybe just a minute just to allow you to enter the main room for this particular session, which is our panel discussion on sustainable supply chain and logistics. When we're looking at perspectives from different industry professionals today. So I'll just give it a moment while everybody joins the session. Okay, so we might start and maybe delve into some of the complexities of our ever-evolving supply chain landscape and explore maybe how businesses are adapting to digital disruption, embracing sustainability, and also maybe looking at some of the areas around mitigating risks, which has kind of come up a bit today as part of a number of the presentations. So firstly, we have Simon McKeever, who's the CEO of the Irish Exporters Association. We also have James Carney from the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and we have Dr. Yvonne Delaney, who's the president of IPEC, who are the Supply Chain Institute. So you're all very welcome to today's session. And I might start proceedings by asking Simon, could you maybe begin by giving us a brief overview of the Irish Exporters Association and maybe give us a little bit in terms of a broad overview of the sector and what are the most pressing challenges that Irish exporters are facing and adapting to the rapid pace of, I suppose, digital disruption within their supply chains?
Sure. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here with such amazing people, or as somebody in America would say, beautiful people. It's beautiful, beautiful. Really happy to be here. We're the Irish Exporters Association, so we're the representative body for the export industry in Ireland, also the import industry, if I'm being honest as well, because a lot of what gets made in Ireland is brought in onto the island. So some of the challenges around customs and other supply chain things are kind of where our expertise would be with our challenges for both importers and exporters. We do a number of things. We're primarily a lobby group, and we represent the export industry as a whole, including the transport sector in it. For instance, we sit on Simon Harris's trade forum, and a lot of other government stakeholder groups. So we're kind of in the room, but we're also a lobby group representing the industry as a whole. We offer a lot of training courses, particularly on customs and increasingly on sustainability regulatory compliance. That's really helpful. Some of which is probably going to get a lot easier for small businesses. We run our export industry awards, and we handle a lot of the export sales for the farm industry. So I can tell you right now that there's a huge amount of that going through as farmers trying to get stuff into the States before any tariffs may or may not happen. So that's what we do. Just in terms of what's kind of bothering people. The single biggest thing obviously is Trump and kinds of tariffs that may bring people away a little bit from focusing on digitalization of supply chain from an investment point of view, and be a kind of a distraction. Because a lot of them are dealing with that. But the kind of things that we're seeing is kind of lack of, literacy in digital. Do people really know about it? How do we get the skills and expertise into them? How do you get them up the value curve of knowledge in that? It is increasingly, I think, going to become a need for a unique kind of specialized talent as that skill set grows. I think, when you talk to particularly logistics companies and warehousing, it's not just AI and digital that's bringing a challenge to it at the moment. It's about bringing, the warehouse fleet, for want of a better name, up into a more greener environment. Standards around the world, the kind of reading of those, and then you kind of, as you get more digital, is the whole system open to more of a cyber attack? I would have thought is one of the things, just to mention a few, and I don't want to talk forever, so I might hand it back to you at this point.
I might move to Dr. Yvonne Delaney, and I might ask you in terms of IPEC, maybe, or IPEX, maybe give us a bit of an introduction to them and maybe some of the challenges that you feel are being faced by industry at the minute.
Thank you, and thank you, Simon. And but Michael, really, IPEX, the Supply Chain Institute, is part of ASCM, which is the Association of Supply Chain Managers in the States. So any of the programs that we run in Ireland are mirrored by the various program options that are available in ASCM. Now, when we look at our own focus, our focus is to help Irish industry, but it doesn't just preclude Irish industry or people working in Ireland. We provide a wide range of services in the form of certification, like it's called a CPIM, a certified public, or beg your pardon, CPIM, in terms of procurement, in terms of transportation and logistics within all of those programs. But we also have a CSCP, which is for people that may have done a degree or may have done previous qualifications and want to come back in and just do a particular set of modules. But on top of that, IPEX would be helping industry in terms of what would be categorized as a score model, which would show all the different elements of plan, make, and buy to help Irish industries and also anybody internationally to make sure that they actually address a particular framework and tackle all the elements in relation to supply chain problems that may be facing them, such as risk, digitalization, AI, and making sure that any of the type of elements that are creating a volatile environment that SMEs, multinationals are working in, at least that they have some type of framework to go back to educate the students. Now, that's on one side of it. The next side of it is IPEX are also the consortia lead for the apprenticeship program, which are being run at the University of Limerick. Now, as well as being the president of IPEX, my day job is I'm Associate Professor of Supply Chain Management at the University of Limerick. And we make sure that we're going out through IPEX as the consortia lead to make sure that we're visiting companies, seeing what the current challenges are, and then modifying our programs accordingly. I collaborate quite a lot with the guys on the panel here and across other institutions, across SkillNet, across the National Apprenticeship Office, in terms of IPEX linking closely with what's happening out there. We try to make sure that we're agile. We try to make sure that we're catering for the different types of problems that people are experiencing in industry. IPEX have also put together, in conjunction with ASCM, a number of programs on resilience, managing sustainability. We're setting up a wing within IPEX in the next year or so, which will focus quite a lot on research, which will look at what's happening at the coalface and to try and then research those elements and then work that type of research into our programs. And like Simon says, I don't want to hug the limelight from James. I'll pass it back to you.
No, thank you. James, from the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, and from your perspective in terms of your members and your students, I suppose, could you give us a flavor of some of the challenges that you're experiencing and maybe give us a little bit of background to CILT, please?
Yeah, so well, CILT, the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, it was founded in Ireland in 1952, but has existed in the UK since around about 1919. But we are part of a professional body that has over 30,000 members worldwide. So we aim to be not necessarily a lobby group, but a representation for the professionals, the individuals working in the industry and working in the sector, and we encourage the professionalization of the sector. So that brings us to probably, I don't like to call them challenges, Michael. I prefer to call them opportunities. One of the things that we've had in transport and logistics primarily for the last, well, almost for the last 100 years, is a commodification of the sector, that it's been seen as a non-value added activity, and there's been a lot of competition with very little differentiation between them. But as we move towards a more sustainable environment and a more circular economy, the decision making in the supply chain is going to get made closer and closer and closer to the customer, and that's going to require a much more value added approach from logistics and supply chain professionals. And so if we take a look at the likes of what Martin Christopher talks about, that is not just a value chain versus value chain anymore. We now have network of value chain versus network of value chains that are competing with each other. And that network is only facilitated by good supply chain management. And that's where the opportunities are for professionals in our sector to add value to organizations and to drive competitive advantage for companies in their relative sectors. So that brings us on to what we do. Probably the primary project that CILT is involved in that impacts this sector is the SkillNet, so CILT Mobility and Supply Chain SkillNet. And we subsidize and support people who are in work to upskill. So companies come to us and tell us what kind of training opportunities they're looking for their staff, and we give them subsidized access to those programs, saving them between 25 to 80% on the cost of those courses. So it has a big impact. We manage a budget of around about €1 million a year that's delivering training in those sectors. So we try to deliver training for people in every mode, so air, road, rail, maritime, and information, and across every function, from procurement right through to warehouse management and logistics, for every industry, so pharma, manufacturing, everybody else. So we're very broad, but we're very focused on supply chain in those broad disciplines.
Thank you for that. I might go to Simon next. Simon, just from the Irish Exporters Association, I'm just wondering, in terms of, I suppose, specific policy recommendations that you as an organization might be advocating at the minute in terms of supporting Irish business, particularly in terms of competitiveness in the face of, I suppose, an evolving supply chain dynamics that we're currently seeing. Could you give us maybe a flavour of some of those policies that, you know, the Irish Exporters Association are pushing at the minute?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you look at it from a, I suppose, more macro point of view, we would have a point of view that in Ireland, when you look at the makeup of companies, you've got some very large foreign-owned multinational businesses, very skilled, you know, have global teams that can deal with whatever seems to come up with. And then you go down through the kind of size, structure, ownership, as you get into more Irish-owned businesses and down into SMEs and micros. And the further you go down, the less skills that we have. So we've always been advocating for the need to be upskilling the workforce at all points. I think one of the major things, and maybe moving away from topic a little bit, that we advocate very strongly for is, you know, Ireland is excellent at taking micro-sized companies, turning them into very good small and medium-sized businesses. We have very few very large businesses that are indigenously owned in Ireland that are trading globally. And we think it's a weakness of the economy, actually. And one of our major things that we've been advocating for years is, you know, is to enhance that very successful development loop that we have centered around Enterprise Ireland, which does an excellent job. But you know, we tend to sell our very good small, medium-sized businesses into foreign-owned larger organizations. And you have this kind of brain trust in Ireland of people who built those kind of companies. And what do? They go back in and they invest in companies in the kind of similar size that they work through and help mentor those companies go through. So we need to build you know, an ability to create and build global sized organizations. And we're not doing that. Specifically on supply chain and skill nets, I mean, we have been advocating for the upskilling across the spectrum, and now our concentration is really on customs and sustainability. So we were advocating very strongly for the Department of Enterprise to set up a focused group on responsible business. We were the main drivers sitting behind that, and it has been set up. So it focused on things like CBAM, EUDR, the carbon border adjustment mechanism for people, the EU deforestation regulation, CSRD, I'm sure everybody's heard of that one, and CSDDD, a lot of which are now about to be watered down. But they do, those four things really, go right through the whole length of the supply chain on both sides. So we have been at the forefront of pushing for a government response on those EU regulations.
Thank you for that. I suppose maybe I'll go back to James just in terms of, I suppose, building on that in terms of, looking for government supports. Just from CILT's perspective, what are some of the key infrastructure investments and policy changes from your members that you believe would be essential for maybe enhancing things like efficiency and sustainability, particularly in relation to the transport and logistics sector in Ireland?
Yeah, well, I guess first of all, I'm going to come back to point that it's not necessarily that we're pushing the government in a particular direction. We try to facilitate the professionals in our sector to respond to what's happening by upskilling and by giving them the tools that they need to take advantage, or not to take advantage, but to best position their companies and their supply chains to respond to those. But what we are seeing a lot of is some of the public sector companies that are involved in mobility solutions are moving very quickly with the development of electric vehicle infrastructure. And we're supporting that as well with the development of training for their teams to support the electric vehicle infrastructure that's being developed and installed. So we run a course with TUS down in Limerick for EV mechanics, or for mechanics to become EV mechanics. But alongside that is a requirement for charging infrastructure to be developed nationally as well. And we're not seeing a huge amount of electric vehicles being adopted by commercial operators because they lack that overall infrastructure as well. So in order to get to that zero carbon solution, we need to very quickly get to that infrastructure development. Now, part of that as well is there's a bit of a lag because of the speed of development of EV technology. On the one hand, is moving very fast, but on the other hand, it's not where they want it to be yet. So there's a bit of a lag there as well. Even in terms of the EV training that's available, it's not yet. Very few places yet have a fully EV mechanic training program available because there is so many, such a desire, such a need for mechanics in traditional vehicles that moving to EVs is not there yet. So it's not just simply a case of building the infrastructure. You have to build the supports that go with the infrastructure as well. And a big part of those supports is always going to be education for new entrants and education for existing employees in those sectors as well.
Thank you for that. I'll go to Yvonne next in terms of some of the strategies, or getting a flavour maybe of some of the strategies that IPEX are promoting in terms of trying to integrate the whole area of sustainability maybe, and how these are impacting in terms of the overall supply chain performance.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Effectively, in terms of sustainability, we would be very, very much focused on the 17 goals. And we would concentrate on the ones, there's a few there that we could look at on the education side, on the people side, and also on climate action. And what we would try and do is, with some of our programs, we're looking at the goals and seeing how well we can integrate those goals into the various different modules on our programs, so that the students that are coming to IPEX, whether they're coming through IPEX directly or whether they're coming through the apprenticeship program, we would try and ensure that the modules reflect the needs within the sustainable goals. So take, for example, the one we talked specifically about is on sustainability, and we would talk there maybe on climate action. We would try to make sure that we link that with our SCORE model, which has quite a number of areas that would look at waste management, resource optimization, specifically resource optimization, which would be in the case of the SCORE model. We would also look at making sure that we have a sustainable model alone as part of one of our certifications under the IPEX banner. But we also, within our SCORE model, there's an area there where we can actually measure the amount of sustainability that the companies are adhering to, or what their contribution to sustainability is. We would also look at resilience in terms of how resilient are those supply chains? How can they stack up? How can they maintain a sustainable approach? Because really, through some of our research, we have found that a lot of people assume putting in a sustainable approach is really going to be very, very expensive. Now, and James touched on it there, like putting in EVs. Some research we have completed on sustainable supply chains shows that maybe an ordinary truck would cost 120,000 euros. An EV, the equivalent EV, could cost 420,000 euros, which is a huge chunk of money for a small SME or a small freight carrier to try and cover. So all the time, in terms of, say, planning, in terms of inventory, in terms of managing the inventory, managing the environment, or managing the company, we're trying to make sure that the students are up to date and skilled to handle the challenges that are facing them, be it waste management, be it cost efficiency, integrating a circular economy or a circular economy, economic principles really, to ensure that they are getting best value for their organizations. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. A question maybe for everybody, but I might start off with Simon on the next question. We're hearing a lot about ongoing shifts in trade agreements and tariff structures. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what strategies do you feel help, I suppose, Irish businesses and Irish companies to try and minimize disruptions in their supply chains?
Right now,
It's anyone's
In rugby terms, Simon, that's what they used to call a hospital pass.
I mean, right now, it's kind of anybody's guess at the moment, to be honest with you, because it's changing so frequently, and with the United States, which is such a huge, important market for us. It was a very important market for our pharma. But it's also extremely important for a load of Irish-owned and Irish-based businesses. About 17% of our trade into the States is manufactured goods, and another 3% is food. That totals about 15-16 billion euros worth of exports. So, we have a habit of a country of concentrating on a few different markets, certainly from an export point of view. Typically the EU, China, the US, and the UK have been the kind of where we've looked to really do business. I mean, in times of crisis, there's always been a diversification effort. So, back in, as a result of the financial crisis, 2008, there was a full swing towards China. China still remains a major market for sourcing, obviously, for certain goods, and therein lies the nub or the rub or whatever you call it for the US. For what's going on in there at the moment. My own belief is the bond market, having the bond market has completely tripped that up for Donald Trump. But in the meantime, China is the second largest economy in the world. And were something to happen that brings that economy into recession, it will have a massive impact on the world as well. And not just from a sourcing point of view, we actually export a lot there as well. But also just the economic deflation of the balloon that will spread across the world as a result of that. So I think companies at the moment are managing a lot of uncertainty, and it's that, you know, and you hear that word being used an awful lot in the media at the moment. Like companies, when they're making investment decisions, want certainty, and you know, at least in Ireland, we're actually very good at doing that. You know, we're very clear about our tax policy, very clear about investment policy. So, you know, Ireland still remains a very good place to do business. And so I think over the next, I mean, I don't believe that trade deals will get done in 90 days. Trade deals are years in the making. So I think we're going to see a lot of volatility during the rest of this Trump presidency. You know, 90 days from now will be roughly when the effect of these initial tariffs will be hitting Joe Public in the States. It takes about 3 months for that to work down into the public. And we've only had a reduction. You know, there's been a reduction from 20 down to 10%. There's still tariffs in play in there. In the food and drink industry, for instance, that sits on top, it's an overlay on top of existing tariffs that are there. So I think we're in very uncertain times. I think people need to ask the question that, you know, and I think American companies will ask this question as well, is can you invest right now in Donald Trump's vision of the USA? I think the answer is no. And, you know, the bond market has certainly put a lid on the risk that the United States can bear. I mean, like it, you know, you were talking yesterday, staring at the precipice, and what's going to go. So this is as far as I think it will go, but I do think we're in for a really roller coaster ride over the next few months and years, actually, to be honest.
What I would say there, Michael, is not necessarily to I don't want to sound like the only tool I have is a hammer and I'm looking for a nail. But for Irish companies that are looking to deal with these issues, resilience and flexibility are critical to it. And they come about by having people who are not just experienced, but who have developed expertise. And I have a very distinct definition between those two terms. Experience is something that gives us the ability to solve problems we've seen before. But expertise gives us the ability to resolve new problems as they come up and to find innovative ways around them. And it usually comes about by a combination of experience and education giving you those critical thinking abilities. So companies need to invest in the skills in their organization. And I've literally seen that playing out in the last few weeks. I had a student, I teach a little bit in SCTU, and I had a student who 6 months ago, we gave them an assignment to do around tariffs. And literally the assignment came home to roost in this last 2 weeks, where she was able to come and tell me, now, I'm not allowed to say the name of the company, but a major brand name in Ireland have been able to identify a pathway around those tariffs to reduce the impact on their product in the US market to cents on their product, just by identifying ways to reduce the cost of the product as it arrives at the tariff border and get it across, and then do some value-added work after the fact. So flexibility and innovative thought, which all comes from education and expertise, are critical to dealing with a VUCA environment, as they say.
Thanks for that. And Eva, just maybe building on that point, from your perspective, what do you feel that, you know, I suppose professionals need to, I suppose, possess going forward in this volatile environment?
Okay, thank you, Michael. Well, first of all, if you look traditionally across the export or the global trade compliance sector, traditionally people learned on the job. There was no set qualification. There was no set of you do a cert, diploma or degree. So many people went into organizations and they learned on the job. More recently, you know, pre-Brexit, there was a scenario where we had the single market and many people subcontracted out this role of global trade compliance expertise to brokers. So therefore, some companies didn't have that expertise in-house, and suddenly Brexit comes on board, and then we have the Trump era. So therefore, this is what I think how we a little bit built on James's point and on Simon's points. The most important thing is that we have a resilient workforce out there that are able to react to the type of tariffs, the type of environmental tariff situation that we're going to be facing. Now, how do we do that? We should, as institutions or as organizations, provide the training and the development for people who may not necessarily have been exposed to this type of environment over the last number of years. Now, I know a number of organizations are providing training on global trade compliance, on import, exports, and I think if we can get a body of people that are qualified, both on the job and academically qualified on the job, then I think we will have that resilience and also that, I suppose, strength, and these people will be able to face the risks that are facing them. Because to be honest, really nobody knows what risks are coming. They don't really know. And anyone who says they're fully aware of all the risks that are coming, maybe they're not at the same races that we're at, because there are risks there that we don't fully understand what we're facing. But if we can get people up to that level, then we will be able to survive this storm. And I think it is a storm, and it will pass, but I don't know what will be left in its wake. That's the problem. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I'm going to go to some of the questions that have been submitted here. Yeah, far ahead.
Just to say, I'm going to have to go in a few minutes.
No problem at all.
We're doing half an hour, so I don't mean to be rude.
No problem at all. No, absolutely fine.
The next one is lined up. I'm sorry.
No problem at all. I might just finish just with one question.
I have to go. So.
Yeah.
No problem at all. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to take a question. No problem.
Okay, yeah. I might just ask one question here. In your experience, what's the most common mistakes companies make when trying to balance costs, risks, and sustainability?
Costs, risks, and sustainability.
Look,
it's a real, thank you for the question. It's a very good question, right? What I have found, and I can only talk about the research that I have found, most people assume sustainability is going to cost them a fortune. But in actual fact, it may not cost you as much as you think. And people are all the time saying, oh, like the example I quoted on the trucks, that's definitely a higher cost. But there are other small wins there that by introducing sustainability into your program, you may actually save costs, and it may actually be cheaper for you to put in to put in the sustainable function, such as solar panels. I know it has an initial outlay, but it could save you in the future in terms of your electricity. Also, resilience is to be in it for the long term. So you just have to make sure that whatever sustainable I suppose, practice you're adopting, that it is resilient into the long term. And that will come from having your people well educated in what is coming down in terms of the sustainable goals. Have a workforce that has a strong level of transferable skills and can chop between cost, resilience, and sustainability. Multifunctional people, I suppose. I don't know whether that answers your question fully.
No, it did. It did perfectly.
Maybe James could answer it as well.
Well, to be honest, it does, Yvonne, from my perspective. But what I would say is I have a point to make about the question itself, and it's missing some important factors, and that are competitive advantage and profitability. And because, as Yvonne said, often sustainability isn't a cost, and we have to look at what the customer wants from the company as well. If you put two products side by side and one product is demonstrably more sustainable than the other, the customer will always choose the more sustainable one, all other things being equal. So we can demonstrate that there is a competitive advantage to be gained from that. And then you can start to quantify it by seeing how much you can push up that price as well, if you really want to know how big that competitive advantage is. So it's important for Harris to consider what does the customer want, and is the company capable of delivering it?
I think that is a really good point.
I have to go. I'm really sorry.
No problem. No, thank you very much. We're finished now anyway. Thank you very much. Look, thank you all very much for your time this afternoon. It actually flew by, but I really appreciate the panelists' contributions this afternoon. Our next and final presentation takes place at 4:30, which is integrating sustainability into every link in the supply chain. So that's 4:30. That will commence. Thank you all very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you all again. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.